Today we have something that's really unusual. So unusual, I don't even know who makes this guy. I believe it was part of a Kickstarter from a few years ago. It's one of several combination sea creatures and land creatures. This one is some sort of a bat shark, and I thought I could find some interesting reference photos. Those are in the corners. And I primed this up with the usual Badger Stannores here. I took just a few simple colors. I had some of I think it was the ebony, some of the gray, some of the black, and a touch of the tan. All I want to do is just get a little bit of shading on that. We're also going to try something that's new here. So this is the new set of Mig Ammo Oilbrushers, and as you can see, we've got some much brighter colors. This is a purple right here. Yep, space purple. There's other brighter colors. We have this really nice bright red here. So I think we got some greens. Oh yeah, look at this turquoise here. So all of these, I think, are going to play a role in trying to make our little bat shark come to life. Now, those are some of the new things. This is also another new thing. So I actually have a blog post that's going to go up real soon, probably long before this gets posted. This is basically my version of the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers in the colors that I like. And talked about how I was able to take my usual oil paints out of the tube, and I think you can even hear that agitator in there. So that's a Payne's Gray. That's another color that I thought would be really handy in this project. Now this is just a little bit of a review for people that probably know. I love my long handle brushes here, or green handle brushes. These are the more beat up versions of these guys right here. So let's see, $4.99. Get these from Hobby Lobby as a set of 12. And the other brush with the brown handle, this is probably going to bounce with a lot of reflections. But you can see there's a number of different sizes here. I think this one is the 6. Goes all the way up to a 12. And I'm actually probably going to incorporate one of those. So here is one of the 12s. So we got ourselves a nice little variety of brushes out here. This is the other thing that we're going to talk about, which I bring up every time I do an oil painting project here. This is from Mona Lisa, or Speedball. It's the Mona Lisa brand. This is White Spirits here. This, you really want to invest in this. It's a little more expensive. This container is about $16 on Amazon, but compared to the so-called odorless paint thinners, which are just brutal on the nose, the eyes, and everything else, you want to invest in something that's nice, because that's what I've got in here. That's what we're going to use. Not so much to clean the brushes, but to thin down the paints. Now we want to do a lot of that, because these oil brushers and what I made essentially are pre-thinned, so you're not going to see that sort of oil paint effect. One other brush that I will probably incorporate here, these are just makeup brushes. Big old set of these, not very costly. It's not so much for painting, but they will be for doing some blending. I'll get into that a little bit later. So let's I can pull out a few of these small plastic containers here, because it lets me hold the paint up a little bit closer. Normally, I think in the past you have seen me paint the little bit of a, what do you want to call it, sort of a pre-wash type of a thing with the either the Van Dyke brown or the burnt umber or something along those lines. Well, here I'm just going to try and go straight into the painting of this. I'm going to set out a few different colors here. Let's try this yellow bone color. So you can see I'm just setting up a tray here. with some lighter tones. And this is what I like about, see, the oil brushers. There's just way less mess. So you can see I was able to just brush my colors right to where I needed them there. And if I have to save time, maybe I'll dig into my oil paints too. But here we go. Watch how this just nice. This is burnt umber thin with white spirits. And you can see how that flows really nicely right out of the gate. This was that same consistency of peanut butter that I mentioned before. So that's the burnt umber. Let's try some of the Payne's gray. And again, that is just fantastic. This is what I had hoped to accomplish in my little experiment. And that worked very well, essentially making my own version of the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers. So let's try this one here. This is Earth Clay. I'm going to shake this up, and I think I'm going to throw it into here, because this is, you see that? I'll point it right there. See that one over there? I think you can see where I'm going with this color here. This is going to serve as, I want to try and get that veiny look through the membranes of those wings. I've just never had a creature like this before to try it on. So there we go. I'll probably have to put out some more of these, but so there's the colors we're going to start off with. And that's, I may sometimes hold it by stick. This initial stage is going to be a little bit more rough and tumble, a little more violent. So I'm just going to hold him here, and this way I can get into this wing. So let's start out. I will have to thin this down a little bit, but you'll see how this really flows. Let's just grab the other wing here. Get this to where it focuses nice. And look at how that covers. So that was not a lot of paint, but boy, did that ever cover in a hurry. The reason I don't have to go as thick with this initial layer is, there we go. I'm gonna get back to his foot. I didn't do that preliminary wash that you normally see me do. So here we go. This is just dropping down some color, see what happens. Let's get a little bit of this white in here. I don't want it to turn too pink, so a little of that yellow ochre color. And I basically have to sort of transition the chest into this. The other thing I've learned with the oils is you sort of have to, it's easier if you sort of work on an area for a while and then let the paint settle for 20 minutes, half hour, something along those lines. So let's get even more into our lighter color here, and this is really what I enjoy about the oils is this part. Being able to just take this, and you can see how it's, let's see if we can move some of this light away here. That's a little better. You can see how I can blend this straight away. And even now I have to remind myself that this is oil paint. Even though it's Mig Ammo, it's going to be wet for a little while. So I went into this, I really didn't know exactly what I had in mind for it. I really didn't want to have a specific plan, because this is supposed to be more of a workbench type of thing instead of a long planned tutorial. So here's some of that nifty little blending. Now you can see what's happened. The brush has gotten dirty. And what that, so you see as I carry it into the oranges, that gets lighter. But look at what it does is that go into the orange. Now it's going to carry that back the other way. So look at how it just that little bit lightens up the inside of that membrane. Look at that, just a tiny bit. What that does to lighten it up. But once again, look what happens. I'll get here to this. See how that's now that's much darker. So we'll get back to our lighter color here. This guy's he's pretty large. So he's not the easiest thing to keep from hitting the camera and everything else. And the one thing about the oils is there's going to be a lot of reflections from the lights. Because, well, as you can imagine, these are wet paint. And they're going to stay wet for a significant amount of time. In the case of the Mig Oilbrushers, I think it's going to depend on your climate, but they can sometimes dry, at least here in the winter time, when it's pretty cold and the heater's been going. I've seen them dry in 4 hours if the paint's been thinly applied, not a whole bunch of layers. The other thing that I wanted to stress in this one, too, that's why I didn't do that preliminary glaze. I'll never forget the first couple of times I went to show people oil painting on miniatures, and they said, so what do you do for a base coat? As you can see, there really is no base coat. You just sort of jump right into it. You just get into your blending. So I'm going to set this guy down here. I'm going to grab a different oil brusher. This is a little bit, it's not a white. It has a little bit of pink to it. It's a cooler color, just a tiny bit. And I want to make sure that I'm aware of this transition that I want. Now, when I was looking for pictures of sharks, obviously, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Great white shark, hammerheads, that sort of thing. Maybe even whale sharks. And just as I just typed in general shark. Well, not general shark, but sharks in general. And tiger sharks came up. And that's this over here. And the one on the left, it had a little bit of markings. That was neat. But primarily, it was more of a brownish color, and I thought that was going to mesh a little bit better with this bat. Now there's some parts of this that I'm not really going to get into painting because as you can see it's handy for me to be able to hang on to it. Pun intended. So you can see these neat transitions. Here we go again. Now as I pick up that darker color, see here, it's still letting me do nifty transitions. And here's the other reason why I like these brushes. It's almost like a filbert brush. Another thing you also have to have when you're working with these, you have to have a bit of a strong willpower not to keep going after things and overworking them. You have to sometimes just leave things as they are, or do it once and leave it alone for a while. So see, I'm not jabbing away at that, just do a little bit, move on. A little more here. We want to see how that just, so I'm just feathering that right there. Yeah, there we go. It's a little less reflection for you. And right, here we go. We'll do this. Yeah. See, that it's really tough with acrylics to get these blends. You can, but you have to work hyper fast. Here, I just take my time. And look at this, I'm feathering that, blending that all. Let's get a little even closer. You can see that is just, it's not something that I could do with acrylics unless I just was working super fast, or I put in drying retarders or things that I pretty much wouldn't want in my paint anyways. So you can see what I'm doing here is get a little paint on. And this is why I didn't do that initial wash. I wanted you guys to see how you could work this together with the references nearby. That's why I didn't do this in a Facebook Live, because there would be a lot of questions as I was doing this. So see here, I'm going to actually go in the opposite direction a little bit. I went a little against the grain. I'll pick up some more of this. And you know, if you're not comfortable with these big old brushes, you can use a smaller brush. It's none of these things are hard and fast rules. They're just suggestions. Just another way of thinking about things. You don't even have to do this entirely with oils. I probably won't. I'll probably get in here with something else. So what I'm going to do is actually grab another one of these number 12 brushes. So we got something nice going on this side. Well, let's not forget about this side. And I'm going to start with, let's do just a touch. Wow. I'm just admiring the mix job that I did on this. So here we go. Let's just attack this. And you get, normally I would have the wash on here with the sponges wiping away the excess. I really enjoy that. It's a lot of fun. It gets a little messy, so I thought, well, maybe here's a method that has a little more control over it. So I'm just going to do this little bit right here. All I want to do is just get paint on the surface. Just get paint on the surface. I'm going to throw a little Payne's gray in here now. Get that where you can see it. And this is not so much the final color I want it to be. It's about what we're going to mix into this. Because remember what we did on the other side of the wings. Remember what we did on the other side. So this is the other thing too. Look at how just a tiny bit of those oils goes a long way. That's something else that you'll have to get used to. Heck, it's something I'm still getting used to. So now is the brown. So it's the transfer here. See we got where his head is. Now we have to think, how are we going to blend? So I got that shoulder there. So let's get a little combination of these two colors together. I'm going to grab them by the leg here. I think I've got the shoulder where you can see it. And once again, we're going to see the blending at work. And what I wanted to have was actually, there you can see it, some of the lighter color underneath and the darker color on top. So see how that's affecting it, but it's not wiping it out. It's not wiping it out. So here we go. A little more. Just trying to get it close to where I've got my kind of flesh color here. Looks like you can see that there. I'm just trying to stabilize this a little bit. It's kind of a violent process here. But watch as I take these. See how they're just blending themselves together. It's sort of doing that all on its own. I don't have to do tons of glazes in here. See, look at that. And I can get some interesting transitions. Sometimes I just have to move this a little bit further away from the camera. I apologize about that. I have to be able to get the brush in here. So see, I'm just pulling that across, blending that. Go back to this shoulder again. And we'll let that blend. There we go. And what this is going to do is going to tone down some of the brightness of that. So let's compare this side with this side. So you can see no blending here. Here we've got ourselves a nice transition. I'm going to bring this back down a little bit. Let's go back over here. So you can see I didn't need a ton of paint to cover a figure that is fairly large. That looks like you can still see what I'm working on there. So now I may not do both wings here because I don't want this to be a 4-hour tutorial. What I may do is one wing, and then you can basically extrapolate what I did, and because it's going to be the same on the other side. So I'm going to take this, just going to let that work itself in there, because that can go in and go over the top of this, no problem. This is what I like about the oils, also, that I can, especially on something like this where I'm just not sure what I wanted to do with it. See, I don't know what I want to do with that transition. But all I did was I just took some of the colors that are already there. And see here, even on the tail, get that a little closer. What I can even do is take a brush. It's got no paint on it. And presto. Look at that blend. That was really, really hard, wasn't it? That was just impossibly difficult. That is, once I realized that's what was possible with the oils, I said, I think I have to really explore this some more. Now, I may do this leg here because obviously I'm going to have to just hang on to the other one here. I wasn't able to really test my handholds on this too much. So let's see, we got that. I'm going to have that other brush that I used to blend things out. I'm going to do the same thing here. Look at this. Watch how that just blends all that together. And what was two entirely separate colors is now a unified, blended color. Now this, what do I want to do with this? I might want to make some spots there, maybe. I'm going to take this same brush, and just like I did in the other areas, I'm going to soften up that transition. Same thing over here. That's why I like to have a collection of brushes. So look at that. Right there. We can do the same thing on this side again. Blend that together, and maybe just leave it. Maybe just leave that be. Let's grab our lighter color here and put some lighter tones on the underside of this. And you don't have to do everything with huge brushes. I can get into a smaller brush. This is one of those number 6s. Because I want to get into the face here. And looking at that ear, I need to have a little bit of red in that. And not to worry, we can get more transitions too. I can add purple to that. So I'm just doing that same thing. I'm just kind of blending the colors that are already there. Just letting those work their way together. And just see what I get. So let's say I wanted to have something more reddish. Now, so let's try this purple color here. Let's try that. Mix it with, I would say, I already have already got this raw umber here. Mix a little bit of that there. Grab onto this leg again. And I'm just going to try and fill in this inside of the mouth here, just so that it's a color. Alright, that's filled in. Go here around this, where the teeth are. Again, I'm just letting that blend. And I can go back with the white, make the teeth white again, or any other color. But what I wanted to do was get some of that color blended into the ears. A little more into his ears. Just that's the point of the oils. And so you see on the picture of the face on the right hand side, there's a fair amount of red there. So, and if I want, I can also do glazes. So let's make ourselves a little bit of a glaze here. And yes, you can do these over wet oil paints. I'll just do one, boom, right there. Boom, right there, so you can see. Now it's a little bit of a different way if you're going to do these kind of glazes. So I just touched it there. Oh, what's that called? Pin wash or something like that. Yeah, that's what it's called, a pin wash. Something like that, pin whatever. But in any case, doesn't matter what the exact term is. The idea is pin line wash, so whatever, you just touch the brush to it and you let the capillary action of the oils do the magic for you. That's something you'll probably hear me say a lot whenever I'm doing one of my oil painting things, is capillary action. So let's get ourselves some darker paint here. Again, grab some of that. Go down this tail here. And we'll try and do some of the shark markings on that too. But the main thing is I just want to leave that face alone for a while. I'm going to let that paint settle for a little bit. And I'm going to get the rest of this. Get some paint on there. Same thing over here on these fins. Top side just needed some paint. Still have my big old brush going here. And if I twirl this away from the camera, I apologize in advance, but that's be hard to avoid. So just to get this in line with the other side real quick. Into the same kind of a blend that we did over there. So you can see I can create, I don't want this to be all light. I just don't know how dark I want it to be yet. See, I can sort of walking that darker paint in. It's more of a brownish color. And I sort of like that, so I'm going to put in actually even a little bit more. Touch of that red. You can see here I'm extending it out into his wings, blending with what's already there. Yeah, let's keep going with a little more of this darker color. Here's, I'm gonna grab his foot again. Just lets me get this in a better position here. So let's grab a smaller brush. Remember those. Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit of that purple to this here. So see how thinly that's applied. See how that flows really nicely. Gets down into those crevice areas. Because oil, just the white spirits, the oil that works a little bit differently than water. Water is thicker, has more tension to it. The oils have less tension. That's actually a really nice advantage. Once you realize what it is and get used to it and learn how to control that. If you're new to oils and you haven't used them before, it's like anything else that's new. You'll have to get used to it. It's going to be different. You're going to run into new things. But if you don't try new things, it's really hard to advance without trying new things. So I think, yeah, looks like I got that in a decent spot. So again, it looks like this is the wing that I'm going to try and paint a little bit more here. Again, just so that this is not too long. It's not supposed to be a complete 4-hour multi-part episode. It's just a little flavor of the workshop. I think you can see now there's a little bit more of a darker overall tone to this. And I can go right back in with lighter colors too. So let's compare this to this side. So yeah, I think that's the other nice thing about doing just the one wing as opposed to the entire figure, is that you can see a little more of the progression. A little more of what it started out as and where you're getting to. So see, I can even, let's say, I've got this transition here. What if I wanted to do something along the lines of, so you see that the picture on the left there? And I'm just going to play around with some markings here. Now what's happening is each time I put one of these dots on here, see how the brush is picking up. So these, what I'm trying to do is get to where that picture is there. So think you can see what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get to some from vertical dots to horizontal stripes. And the idea is to actually let the brush pick up some of that paint. And then I can get rid of some of it. Let me just grab my foot again. And then let me just blend away the edges of a few of these. So you see how the spots, see this one's got hard edges. So let's get in here with a new brush. Make sure it's in focus. And go in there. See, I'm just feathering some of the edges. Because out here, whoops. Yeah, I think I have to hold it there for you guys to be able to see it. Let's grab a little bit of my white spirits there. Yeah, I think I can hold it for you there. So I'm trying to put basically some shark markings on this. Tone that down. I'm going to work with the markings that I've got. A little bit of a hint that I gave myself there. And it's sort of like a dot. And then there's sort of more longer, elongated versions of the dots. Ah, good. There we go. So they sort of follow in line with each other. So this is just all I'm trying to do is get an impression of how I want some of these spots to work. So just trying to lay these out. Make these even maybe a little bit larger here. And then sort of clean off that brush. You can even find another brush here to there we go. So you can tell all those hard, nasty lines. And now we're going to make all those hard, nasty lines. They are going to go away. And this is, you could, I guess you could mask this and airbrush that. But you see how simple this was. There was nothing to mask. Look at how subtle this is. And if I didn't like it, I could just take one of my makeup sponges and wipe it right off. So I think that's still in a good spot for you to see. So I'm going to leave it right there. What I'm just trying to do is feather out some of those spots, and I can always go back, darken those, sharpen some edges, but again, the whole point of oils, you're sort of looking at it here. So you can see all these in no time at all. I was able to get some nice subtle markings on that. So let's spin it around to here. There's just nothing. That's not terribly interesting. And then over here, we start to get some markings going on that. And let's say you want a little more control over it. You can always take a more of a pristine brush. Let's see if this will do the trick here. I'm going to get some of my Payne's gray going, and now we're going to make it a little bit thinner. A little bit thinner. And see how I can work to make some of these spots a little bit darker. Do the same thing here. Can change the shape of them. Let's say I like more of these elongated ones like that. I'm going to put some spots down in here in the wing crevice. And here is that blending brush that I was using. It's going to get in here, feather that out a little bit. I don't want super hard lines. I was just trying to darken that down a little bit. And I can just completely feather that right into. So let's try some of these. Up here on the shoulder. May not even want these here. But the beauty of this is to be able to try it, see it, if you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, you can just get rid of it. I just thought it would be more interesting on the chest than just a big old white belly. Just some way to incorporate the bat and the shark together. And you can see how I'll hold it this way. See how the dots, as I can make those more and more subtle, because what I'm painting is, well, wet oils onto wet oils. And didn't even grab the blending brush yet. I'm just taking the brush that has that original color. So here, yep, that looks neat too, but now just starting to get a nice hint of a pattern here, and who knows, maybe I even wipe even more of that out so that it's even more subtle. As I can brush a lot of that away. So it's just more of an impression as opposed to something that's really, really stark. And again, if I don't like it, I can go right over the top of that. I could blend it all back together again. There's a lot of options. Lots of options. I'll leave it kind of more in that subtle zone like that. Gonna go back in here. I'm actually gonna try some more of that purple color there. That was kind of neat. And let's find ourselves another. I think there's a Starship. What is this one here? Starship Bay Sludge. Let's see what that looks like. So that one, that's more of a tan color right there. It's not quite as deep as my raw umber. because I want to see. Yeah, so it gets a little more of a reddish tone in here. That's what I was wanting there. It's not just about darkening it, but I could tell right there. Now this is the thing that's different. As I was putting my glaze in there, I noticed I was starting to pick up some of the lighter colors that I was glazing over. And I had to stop what I was doing, go back, and get a little more fresh glaze there. So what I'm going to do is, and I know this is going to look, it's going to look really awful. So what the heck is he doing? What is he doing there? Well, remember our little blending brush trick here. The same thing here, just to blend some of that in. Just wanted to encourage a little more. That's it. Had to move some color around. And that sort of helped to facilitate that a little bit. And this is another fun thing here. See, I'm going to pull. See, I just pulled some of that color out of there. I'm going to pull some more. I just pulled out some more color. That basically what I'm doing is that glaze that's sitting in there, it's like a little reservoir of color. I just pulled some of that out of there. Now, I may end up painting over this, but yeah, we'll do this. I'm going to grab some of this, some of my raw umber here. Make sure there's a little more red in this. It's pretty thin. I have to think, where would these veins really be? I'm going to go from out of his fingers here. So see that? And you can see how it just like before, is how it's picking up. It's picking up the paint, the lighter color paint underneath. So if I want it to be dark, or at least keep that same color, I need to go back. But I don't want these to be solid lines, so you see how I let it sort of skip right there. Just let it skip right there. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker. And this is, look at how, see how that flows? Look at how the tiny little line that I can get out of this. And this is wet oil over wet oil. Here, I'll just take this and I'm just going to pull some of that. So we've got ourselves the start of some veins. So here again, nothing. This wing, we've got some advancement. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to grab ye old blending brush again. Get this where you can see it. And start to fade a little bit of that. I can only do so much because I've picked up some color. Same thing here. So I think you can see how we're starting to look at that kind of a hard edge on that. Now let's say you don't want to use a large brush for that. Well, you can Use a small brush for that too. Let's get it where we can see it. You can see how that is also been toned down just a bit. Same thing here. So see how it, instead of before it was right kind of in your face, and now it's a little more subtle. But I'm going to leave a few areas that are more intense like that. Let's go back to my other brush here. Make sure again it's got to be thin enough to flow. So this is actually very thin. It's that thing that people take a while to understand, that thinner paint will stick on top of thicker paint and vice versa. So here we go, just reducing the pressure a bit. One more time. Just, again, I don't have precise reference, and anyway, this is somewhat of a fantastical beast here, so you can't really, can't say, well, what does a real bat shark look like? So here I'm just, kind of the old oil painter in me is just going with what I've got. Instead of kind of putting the vein down and trying to tone it down, I'm just kind of letting it tone itself down on the fly. And here I'm just going to take that same brush. You can see how I'm just softening up. Softening up that edge. Let's see what happens. I turn this upside down. I think that gives you a decent angle there too. Now I'm trying to get the impression of some veins that are maybe hidden by a little more of the membrane. And all the while I'm trying to be careful. I have to just be aware of. See, now I'm trying to add a little extra kind of subtle extras there. And I always have a few of these kind of feathery brushes here that I can use to get in here and push some paint around if I need to. Just blend some of that in. So let's see what we got here. Again, versus here, which just doesn't have, there's not a lot of life to that, not a lot of zip to that. So the face, that's actually, I'm looking at that, there's a lot of light to it. You can see I haven't really used a ton of colors here either. That was another thing that was going to be part of this, was just not a whole lot of colors. Now I can see I can use the smaller brush. I'm starting to bring back some of those lighter colors. Not everything. I'm not going to do everything with a giant brush. I'm not going to do everything with a tiny brush. And I'm just trying to work my way a little deeper into this. So I'm going to, again, grab some of the white spirits to thin this down. And I've got to around the eye, it's actually a little bit lighter. And the thing you have to do is sometimes, especially with the oils, you have to let things kind of be a little bit of a mess. I think people are used to maybe with their acrylics, they paint one little part of it and they get that looking really nice or whatever, and the rest of it's just primer. You can't really work that way with oils. You can't just work on a spot. You really have to, as I call it, work globally on it. You have to be able to do all areas at once. So here I'm starting to add a little more of the light color to this. And there's nothing that says I can't go back over it with the dark colors. You can see what I'm trying to do here is like that picture in the upper left-hand corner where you see more of the light around the eye, and the eye itself is pretty dark. And try to get a little bit of this yellow ochre in there. And also the other thing I'm going to say is that light is relative, because none of the colors, these colors look light that I'm using right now. But as you can see here, as I put it next to the palette, that's my lightest color. It looks so light right now because, again, next to it is, we have all the dark. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to try a little bit of the orange color. I'm going to go back and grab some of this. Now that is light. So let's go back in to our face here with a little bit of this color that actually is light. Let's see what happens when I touch a few of the teeth with it. So it's sort of like a vampire face, but with a shark nose and shark teeth. So even that, whoop, too close, starts to make a big difference, and we're nowhere near white yet. So again, I know it's a weird, really weird critter. I had to really search far and wide to see what I was going to do with this thing. I just had no idea. So I want to get some of this pink. So I'm going to take my light color here, mix it with that purple. So I'm really enjoying these new Mig Ammo Oilbrusher colors, that's for sure. Definitely doing what I hoped they would do. I think it just have a little more punch to them. So, speaking of punch, let's try and press forward here with something that is really light. So there you go. Now we're starting to get some lighter colors in here. And what I'm trying to do is experiment. I want to see. I also want to see what happens if I put almost like a semi-fur texture in this. So I see the bottom of this ear, at least in the picture in the upper left, is got kind of a light thing going on around it. So there we go. Now, as far as the dark goes, same thing applies. Thin this down. There's a little bit of the Payne's gray. And I'm just going to try and plop that where the eye is. Then go back underneath it. And let's see what happens if I take this and just add a little bit of that. So normally when I'm doing eyes, these days I actually like to sort of dispense with the usual kind of highlight dot on the eye and actually go over it with a realistic water medium. Let's get back to some of that pink. I see I need to thin it down, because when your paint is not sticking, that means it's either usually too thick or too thin. I just wanted to get a little bit of reflected, not a reflected light, but a little transparency to the eye. So we'll do our little dot there. A little bit of a subtle dot there. And I'm going to grab some more of that dark purple. Just going to make sure, yeah, that's clean enough. Then I mix with some of my brown. And I'm going to work my way around a few of the teeth there. Seems, yeah, this is kind of that, is it a bat, is it a shark sort of thing. Let's get some pink in here. More so just to make sure I have enough color transitions. And it's hard for you to see a lot of what's going on with the face because it's shiny. That's just the nature of wet oil paint. It's going to be shiny. So here's going to be a little bit of a glaze. Over top of that. So I can only do a few little hits. Let it go. And that's a little bit of a pin wash there. Get rid of some of that. And then I can do some little bit of wet into wet blending here. I want to get some more pink into the ear. Don't know if you'll be able to see it necessarily. Again, you can see we're emphasizing sort of the left-hand side versus the right-hand side. So I just want to, the whole idea is here is it's not really to show you how to paint a shark bat from start to finish. This is just to give you some ideas about the oils. And so again, I'm going to do some, I want a little more red in this. Down here, a little bit of a glaze in there. Here's my blending brush. And just pull some of that out of the crevices. It's hard to do. You really can't necessarily do that with the acrylics. Now, just like we were talking about before, what seemed to be light was not really light. Let's get some light colors in here. on the chest and see what happens. See how much lighter that is. And I always remember do a little bit and then go back to my original color, because every time I touch this, I pick up some of those darker colors that I'm painting over the top of. And that's what gives you the ability to blend like I just did there. But it also means that your color can get muddy. I've seen that happen to people. See, one stroke, leave it. I'm going to go right back, get more paint. You have to be tactical with each brush stroke. Because, again, like I said, every time I brush over this, I'm picking up a little more of the color that was already there. Now in this case, that's what I'm looking to have happen. But if that's not what you want, well, then you need to go back again, grab that cleaner color. And I wanted to get a little different. Yeah, needed to get rid of what I had. I didn't necessarily like what I had going on there. Gonna get in here with some of that white also. So I just see here, we'll just paint those things out completely. If I didn't like them, don't have to leave them there. So that's all gone. And I can get back in with that lighter color. Try and lighten this up again. The other thing I wanted it to do, since there was some gray in that, it cooled everything down. That was something I wanted to have happen, because it was just getting to be a little bit too warm, too much of the orangey stuff in there. So let's go back to now. It's going to be hard for you to see some of these lighter colors that I'm putting on, because again, it's a little more reflection with the lights. So I'm going to try and move some of them away. Now the other thing too is I'm still trying to get used to, right now I'm using XSplit, because what it does is it allows me to make these videos a little more easily. A little bit more easily than if I was to just set up a separate camera, kind of like what I do for the battle reports. So now I've got this here. I can even add a little more. See how much more light that I can get. Look at how much more light that I can get. I'm going to put even more here. I'm just going to put a big old blob of it there. You say, oh my gosh, that just looks horrible. Yep, we've got ourselves some options. Remember these makeup brushes I was telling you about? Well, as you can see, that does a really nice job of feathering that in. Just have to remember to get some of the stuff you've picked up off of there. So you can see how we've blended the underside of the chest. We'll do the same thing here, because guess what? This is what makeup brushes are for. Is to get these sort of soft blends. Do this here. Same thing. these, you don't have to get all of these things at once. And again, they're not terribly expensive. A whole big old thing, about 20 of these brushes is, I don't even know if it's $10. Here's the other nice thing, that once the oil, see how the oil paint has settled down a little bit. I can even go over here, make sure I get all the excess off of that. Over here on this wing, do the same. See, I'm just softening some of these things up. Right here, see that? Let's see, yeah, you can see that. See how I can just tone that down slightly. Feather it out. So remember how stark that was when we started? And now it's more of a little subtle piece of it. What I'll do is, when this guy's done, I'm going to be adding some of those pictures to the video, sort of a little gallery of what he looks like when he's done. Again, that's kind of the advantage of using this. So here, so we got this edge. Got this nice big old brush here. And I'm just going to attack that. Look at that nice transition right there. Now, if this was a tiny little 28mm thing, well, alright, maybe that's easy to do with acrylics, but on these larger figures here too, sometimes it can be tough to get a nice smooth blend over a large arcing piece like that. Again, clean some of that off. See how it just subtly, can use it to blend these areas together. Remember, I've got my original markings on the back here. Now let's get back to that. We haven't messed with that in a while. I don't even remember what the original colors were that I used there. I'm just gonna find something. And look at that shark. I think another reason I didn't want to mess too much with this is that it's kind of in a shadowy area. It's going to be tough for you to see. So yeah, not every video won't necessarily be able to show all facets of things because, well, they just might not fit into the camera too well. Maybe difficult to light it. I know I've got some creature caster things that I'm working on. And those I'll probably have to work in pieces. Keeping the wings separate, so it'll be a little bit easier to work on those. One thing I did want to get to here. So see, again, I'm doing the same thing. See, it's really hard to see what I did there. You can see it now a little bit. So what I want to do is, we haven't done anything with this yet. So let's get back to, I'm going to get that original earth clay color back out on the palette. Again, I probably will have more of a spot texture here, but get this where you can see it. So I've got this paint here. And guess what's going to happen? I'm going to go into that. See, I'm scrubbing away at that. So I just blended away that edge. That was an edge that I probably painted an hour ago. And there was no problem. Here, let's grab some of that pinkish color. And more transitions here. So this is, again, the difference between starting out with that initial glaze versus just taking that oil paint, attacking the figure, and you can see there's no base coat here. It's a very different approach. You can see I'm keeping this paint relatively dry. Relatively dry. You can see I'm doing kind of a dark to light transition. I know it mostly just looks dark. And now to make things flow a little bit better, I did add a little bit of white spirits to this. And what we did on the inside of the wings, we're doing kind of a similar thing here on the outside. Just taking some of these lighter colors. Some of these lighter colors here. You can see how that does. It just blends on its own. I don't want to necessarily get up in here and alter that too much. But I am going to do the same thing here. So again, it's really dark. You're going to have a hard time seeing it. But I am going in here. Same thing on this side. You can see that wing. See how those darker colors get pulled into a blend there. Just blending all this stuff together. That's just the beauty of the oils. So again, a little bit of the white spirits to help it flow. And I have to remember to get in and pick up some clean paint. And the whole idea of this is I've got purples in here. You can't, it's hard to, it doesn't necessarily show up on camera. Let's see what happens if I take, okay. Now you can see it a little bit better. Now that I've got the light down in there. There we go. So again, we've got our spots here. Have some transitions. We have some blood veins. It's just before this thing runs too long, I'm going to go back to the face here. Because just like before, we've let things sort of calm down. Letting that paint just settle. I don't know what other word I can tell you besides just let that paint relax a little bit. And it's amazing. See how I can go back into those teeth there and highlight those a little bit. I can go back in here and add some more light to the this. I want to have a little bit of pink in that. Trying to get this where you can see it. And then back to some lighter color here. And I have to determine too, the face that's over there, there's sort of a fur texture that's going on. Do I want it to have that fur texture? and there. I know a lot of people, I know some people that are practically be trying to strip this thing right now. And I'm just going to go in here and restore. Let's bring that back. Not a big deal. Well, I got my little brush here. I'm going to experiment with some. See if I want some smaller. Yeah, that's kind of neat. I definitely like the idea of these smaller spots here. Just gives the chest a little more interest. So I've thinned down the paint quite a bit. You can see how it's already starting to pick up what's underneath. Trying to vary the size and the shape a little bit. And this is very, very thin paint right here. Really, really thin. Now the thing is, do I necessarily want that on the thigh here? Let's give that a shot. See what that looks like. Maybe almost have those spotted areas meet together. And what I'll do is, after these, just like before, after these have sort of settled down a little bit, I'm going to go after the edges. Make those softer. So remember I had a whole different thing in mind for this area when I started. I mean, something completely different, but I just like this. Just like it better. I think two people, they figure they just have their original plan for a figure and that's it. That plan either works or it fails, and that's it. See here, those spots, I'm turning those more into stripes. Like this. So right here over this leg. It's one way to, it's a way to carry that darker color into this lighter zone in a more interesting way, I think. You can see here, I don't mind if it picks up some of that lighter color and it lightens up those spots. You don't want the spots to be the same intensity everywhere, because that'll just be too much of a visual frenzy. And just going to add a few here, and then we can spin around. You can see what we started with. So there's our two sides. Like that, so it doesn't get too shiny. So I'm going to back this away a little bit. Back away some of the extra lights. And see how we have this sort of undercurrent of these spots, and I can work these over the top. It's almost a couple different types of spots. I just have to think what's going to be interesting for people to look at here. Got my makeup brush. So I can soften some of these, just like I did before. So now I've got these kind of arcing over the leg there. Let's get a few up here. And sometimes, now maybe one of the reasons I use the oils is because I'm working on a ton of different things at the same time. So I would have several other things that are just maybe in this sort of color realm here. There's sort of a similar family of colors. And the idea is I can work on all those at once, and if this, like here, to work on this leg, obviously it would almost be easier if I let things dry elsewhere and went back to it later. It doesn't all have to be done all at the same time. It doesn't all have to be wet blended. These are just suggestions. It's all these are, just possibilities. Yep, maybe you're more comfortable painting these spots on here in acrylics. And if so, there's certainly not any kind of an issue with that. When I first used the oils, anything that was a detailed area was instantly painted just with acrylics. Because I didn't think I'd be able to do it with the oils. And I realized that, oh yes, you can. So see here, I'm just gonna try and show you a few more finished type thing, even though this is nowhere near sort of the finished stage. But see, I'm taking the small brush. I'm starting to pull out a few of these areas here. So here on the chest, same thing. Look at the difference, one side to the next. So you just like I did when I was in art school, I started out with the bigger brush, made my initial blends. I blocked in lots of colors. And then see now I'm starting to add more subtle things. Now I can see how I wanted to highlight the chest. And all the while, see, I can still add a little bit of that purple type color to it. If I think things are just gonna start getting too boring, see, I can still even blend here. This was my whole plan with the oils all along, was to be able to do these kind of things. I missed it. I couldn't do it with the acrylics. Hadn't done it in a long time. And now that possibility's back, makes me happy. So as you can see on the scroll, the Patreon page, basically what that does is it helps me to make more videos like this. Because the editing time, it takes a while to edit these and process these, and there's definitely been a lot of equipment that I've had to get. So that's why I started up the Patreon page, to make these things more of a possibility. So I wanted to see what would happen if I had a little bit of lighter color here. Let's blend this in. That's all I wanted, was a little bit of a lighter color there. So I'm just pulling it. I just pulled it out. Pull that over here. And then let it blend away. And I've got a brush here that I can use to feather that. Even make that marking disappear. the edges are too hard, I can always go after them like that. So you can make plenty of adjustments. The oils are very flexible. I mean, acrylics are too. It's kind of as flexible as you allow it to be. Because it can, every medium. I know a lot of people say this is kind of unforgiving and difficult to use. It's just you sort of adapt to it, learn how to control it. So I'm just adding a little bit of a lighter tone in here, not too much. And if it's too intense, I can always, as you saw, I can always kind of glaze that down. I just wanted to, while I might have seen that in the picture, I just didn't necessarily like it on the figure. The other reason I wanted to do this was to sort of show that balance of, oh yeah, you got your references, you got your pictures, but sometimes you have to do your artistic license and kind of do your own thing. So I'm just trying to get this in a place where you can see it and I can hold it. I'm going after the eye here. Just wanted to get a little more of the dark on the top of that. So here we go. Oh yeah, that's about in focus there. So we've done all kinds of nifty stuff on this side. You can see where we sort of started here, but all of this is still very workable. I can still get in there, do exactly what I did on this side. Now the one thing is, these Mig Ammo Oilbrushers, by tomorrow morning, pretty much all of this is going to be dry. Now if this was my regular oil paints, most of it would still be very wet and workable. So that's, again, everything has kind of a trade-off. It's really nifty that it dries faster, but it also means that anything I want to blend tomorrow, I better do tonight. So here we go. Continuing. I'm going to grab a clean blending brush at this point, because all the ones I've been using, those just have a ton of paint on them now, and I'll have to actually clean those. You can start out by using the white spirits to clean them out, but a really nice thorough cleaning actually with the rubbing alcohol does wonders. So what I want to do is get a few lighter areas in this. You can see I mixed in a little bit of the orange there. Do the same thing here. Now, I could have done this before I did the veins, but one of the reasons I'm doing this is to actually make the veins maybe go back down. Yeah, that's clean. Just to make it look like they're below the surface. And the idea is here, I'm going to take this, as I blend this, some of the veins in effect recede a little bit. So just a little subtle bit of shading over the top of those veins. And now it's also starts to give you more of the impression that there's maybe some light coming through the membranes there. And we'll do a little more. Not much. Now this could also be the interesting thing about oils and blending and stuff. Let's say these wings are completely dry. Now you can see it. It's weird because you can still blend oils. It'll look wet into wet, but just because of their nature, you saw, I think, even initially when I was first working on this, you saw how I was able to blend oils. Even when I was first doing my first layers, I was able to blend some of that oil stuff because of how it works. So you don't even have to think the oil's got to be wet to blend it. It's something you just kind of have to just try. It's hard for me to describe. But you can just feather that oil paint and push it around so easily that in effect it lets you do wet blending. I think I found out about it. I was putting oil-based, like this mud stuff on vehicles, and I found that I could feather that. The whole rest of the vehicle was all dry. It was only where I was putting the oil mud stuff, and I found that I could blend that. I said, well, wait a second. That's I wasn't expecting to be able to do that. See here now, those veins start to even recede a little bit more. And what I'm going to do here is, just so that those aren't dark with no shading on them, I'm going to plop a little bit of a light color in there. Take this. And do a little bit of blending there. So again, we have more and more little subtle things happening here. I'll start out like that. Not with a lot of colors. You know, you go back to the beginning of this, you'll see I think I maybe used 4 or 5 tops. And again, I'm trying not to emphasize you must do this, you must do that. Even as I'm working on this, I'm in effect, in some ways, counteracting things that I've shown you in other ones before this. Because I don't want people to think there's some, well, this is the other thing too, it just seems like people like magic formulas. They want something that if I do this 100% of the time, it's going to come out exactly the way I want every single time. And as you can see, miniatures tend to be very different. This one is unlike anything I've ever even attempted to paint before, and I've been at this for 17 years. So eventually, you have to be kind of prepared for almost any possibility. And that means you have to build in a little bit of flexibility in your approach. again, I'm just trying to get back into the other side of the face here, on the shoulder. So I'm not going to bother repeating what was done over here. I'm going to actually try and go back into the other side and add a few subtle things. So here's my Payne's gray. Again, that's sort of my homemade oil brusher there. Just want to get in some darks here. And I may go ahead and do that via a little bit of a pin wash. Yeah, it's going to be hard for you to see. You'll just have to kind of trust me on that. Yep, and I want to darken up the top of the nose there. And I think I want to restore. So I think those are actually supposed to maybe be gills there. But I want to give those a different sort of a marking. Just, I don't know, I wanted to do something different with those. So here is that light color mixed with that orange again. One thing, I don't know if you'll be able to notice or not, but I can already see it that parts of this, they're not necessarily dry, but they're already losing some of that initial shininess. And the oil brushers are going to do that faster than traditional oil paint. I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to try them out for you. Also wanted to, they just showed up not long ago in the mail, and I was really curious to see what I could do with them. So again, I would suggest if you're seeing this for the first time, you can go over to my blog. The address has been scrolling all this time. Then I've got lots of busts, historicals, other monsters, things that have been painted with the oil paints. And you should go and check those out so you can get a bit of a handle on what these things look like once the paint is all dry, once they've gotten their tester's dull coat varnish on them. So I just want to see, do I want to bring out those spots quite so much? We'll see. Yeah, that's not too bad. I can just blend that away. Even here, just tone some of that down. Because I know the whole thing is all about smooth blends. Well, you can see this is an avenue to getting those smooth blends. So let's take that Payne's gray. See what happens when we add a little bit of lighter color to it. You can see it turns sort of like a bluish gray, because that's basically what Payne's gray is. It's sort of a dark bluish gray. I just wanted to hit that talon. Actually, I'm just going to use regular brush here. And it's just so much easier instead of a whole bunch of layers of paint. I can do that and just sort of blend it. And a little bit later I can even do a bit of a dark glaze there in some of these some of the crevice areas. I can add a little bit of a lighter tone here. And I don't want to get too much into highlighting these parts. I will throw out a little bit more of, what's it called? Yellow bone, that's what it's called. You can see at no point did I use white at all. And this is an off-white. And I really, really enjoy the off-white. So I'm just going to hit that area. So you can see I'm leaving myself a few strategic places on the figure where I can stick my finger to balance things out. And I'm just going to get in here with same lighter colors on that side. Again, to bring out some of the details that I've got over here. I'm going to go back in here again. Some of my original burnt umber. And I'm going to see about, I'm going to put some markings on this cheek here. Maybe a subtle one there. I'm also trying to almost get a little bit of that fur texture. And that's what I've been trying to do up here. We've got a little bit of a lighter color that's pretty thin down. And it's just trying to maybe give it a little impression of some fur texture. Try and blend these two somewhat unrelated critters together. Again, you never know what kind of a challenge you're going to face when you do the miniature painting thing. So I think this one here, it's got to be at least about an hour and a half long. But it should give you a pretty decent sense of how you can do some of these subtle things here, like this on the wing. The blood vein, let's try and make those even a little more pronounced. Now that we've let those not necessarily dry, but we've let that paint settle for a while. Let's use some of the same colors we used to make it. Again, that's the burnt umber and that purple. And I'm going to pick out a few areas here. See, before I just sort of mapped it out, but now what I'm after is a few areas where it's going to be a little more intense. just gotta make sure it's thin enough that it's gonna stick. Ground by the foot here. And just get a few portions of these veins. And then maybe even a few little shadow areas there. You can see we've darkened down a few areas. And again, what I can do is even let all this stuff dry and then go back over it again with some more oil paint. Let's go back to some of our original, and see that paint is still nice and wet. So I can still get in here. I can still blend. Still, see, right in there. And that is the beauty of oils. But this was first put the paint on that almost 2 hours ago. Or at least I think almost a couple hours ago. Could be wrong. At least an hour and a half ago. And one thing I do know for sure, if that was acrylic paint, that would all be bone dry. So I'm gonna hit a few of the teeth over here. And I didn't even realize that was more of a shark mouth until I actually just started to paint it for all the references that I looked at. And that's why I've got those references in the corners for you guys to see. Oh, good! I got some of this pink color here that I can throw into the ear. Needed a little bit more here too on the face in some places. Just a little bit. A few little dots of highlights there. And just this is about creating a little more color variation there. As far as a base for this, I've got some seashells and that sort of thing. I've got my aquarium plants, and I've found some fun ways to make those not look like aquarium plants, but actually have a little more realism to them. You can, I think that's would probably be under basing techniques. I've got a few already that I've done. So let's blend away some of this, just make some of this a little more subtle. It's attracting attention to places where you don't necessarily want that center of interest to be pulled away to. Let's do some subtle stuff here on this tail. I think you can see it still. So this will be some of the final things that I do here. Let's just get this to flow a little bit better. And that's what I want. I need some of these just gonna get myself a few of these markings here. Sorry. A few of these markings here on the back. And again, I wasn't still wasn't sure exactly how I wanted to approach this. And I may change these still. Who knows? But I'm just going to take advantage of... See how that's even... Now that's even now it blends itself a little bit. Just going to throw a couple more here. And just like I've done before, grab myself a brush too. Blend these out. And just give them a little more of a subtle appearance. It would just... I know I've tried to do this with acrylics, and I know that I've gotten techniques to make it go a little bit faster, but not fast as in that fast. And with that much flexibility, because I'm just working with wet paint here. Got wet paint over wet paint because I've kind of invested some time in figuring out how to control it. And if I wanted to, I can always, if I wanted to with a smaller brush, can go in here. There we go. Now if I want to form that shape a little bit better, get some of these spots to look like they're part of an overall pattern. May I make these more elongated here. But the nice thing is that I can go and make my adjustments as I need to. And that was, again, just a little bit of the Payne's gray, a little bit of the burnt umber. And I'll just make that into a spot there. So hopefully this was a fun at the workbench thing. And it's an unusual thing. Really not something you see every day. And I thought maybe this could be useful to you guys, something new. So I just want to say thanks for watching, and I appreciate everybody that's done the Patreon page so far. That the support means a lot. I wouldn't have been able to get the things that I have without it. And the more people support, the more of these type of things that I can do. So now I'll get into some more images, maybe a few more that are work in progress, and then some of the finished. So thanks again.